Who come with weary spirits seeking rest, who come with hope in your heart, who are seekers of a new faith, who enter this hall as a homecoming. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome to the Lake Chapala Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Deb Gang, and I am today's service associate. Reverend Matt will be presenting our message via Zoom this morning. Our announcements are on a slideshow before the service and were also sent out by email with the weekly newsletter. If you're new and would like to receive the newsletter, please talk to a member of the welcome team or write to us at info@lakechapalauu.org. And now a special welcome to our visitors. If you're visiting with us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you're on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand feature and we'll ask you to unmute. If you're in the room, just raise your hand. Do we have anyone new today? Perfect. All right, that was quick. Is there anyone new on Zoom?
Nobody that I see.
Okay. And just a brief note, we offer a wide variety of services on various topics presented by our members, outside guests, as well as our minister, Reverend Matt Alspaugh. We hope you will return to sample this variety of thought and belief. You say as many as you want.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. A couple of weeks ago, I played Hoedown by Aaron Copland, which was the arrangement that the group Emerson, Lake and Palmer did back in the 70s, and everybody seemed to like it. So I thought, well, I'll do a couple more, especially as the service today is called Creative Genius. And the two composers that I'm going to feature today, the original composers, Aaron Copland and Tchaikovsky, were both creative geniuses, but so were Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because they took several classically based works and reworked them into a 70s progressive rock style, but still managed to retain the essence of the original compositions. So we're going to start with Fanfare for the Common Man by Aaron Copland, arranged by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and subsequently rearranged by me.
Our chalice lighting words today are by Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share. Now let us light our chalice with these words that we sing together.
We kindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
There are many ways to be of service to LCUUF. Our time, treasure, and talents are all necessary components to a healthy fellowship. Now is the time in our service when we ask that you share the gift of treasure through pledging and donations. Instructions for payments to the fellowship are on a slide during the announcements before the service every week. For the people here at the fellowship, we'll pass a basket. If you're new here today or you're struggling to hold things together, let the basket pass you by. Your presence is more than enough and is a gift to us. If you're not attending the fellowship in person, please donate to Share the Basket when you pay your pledge. Donate to Share the Basket separately or indicate what part of your donation is for Share the Basket. And while you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month, LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in our Lakeside community. We share 1/2 of the offering collected at the fellowship each week with that organization. For the month of May, we've been supporting Tepeawa Centro Comunitario. The Tepeawa neighborhood is situated on the hillside above downtown Chapala. It is considered one of the poorest neighborhoods in the state of Jalisco. Their vision is to help a village to help itself, to create a place the poor of the village can go for food, counseling, guidance, and help of any kind. The offering has been given and received, and we are grateful. Our opening hymn is Let All the Beauty We Have Known. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing. was a challenge. All right. Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for each other. The sharing of joys, sorrows, and milestones is one way that we practice holding one another in community. We speak what is in our hearts, sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives, because there's power in the sharing. We'll start with the folks in the room to give those on Zoom a chance to type joys or sorrows into the chat to be read out loud by the Zoom host. First, let us recall the joys, whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others.
Thank you, Deb. Well, for 6 generations in my first husband's family, the Caldwells, they only made boys. Then in 2005, we got our first girl who's graduating with honors from high school today, and an outstanding student, and beautiful and smart and amazing kid, athletic as well. Thank you.
Today, my husband is beginning to use his right hand, and he has had an operation on his shoulder a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really happy about that.
Are there any joys to be shared on Zoom today?
Yes, there are. First is Deborah Kelly. I'm so grateful to be in Wellfleet on the Cape in Massachusetts with all my cousins having a lobster feast this weekend. And from Lynn Cleek, our joy is that we're leaving for the U.S. Tuesday to attend our granddaughter Tristan's graduation. Then we'll spend time in Oklahoma and Colorado visiting the rest of the kids. Tristan will drive okay and be here with us at the end of June. It's been 6 years since she's been here. And then finally, from Dee Dee and Larry, they are returning after a month of Dee Dee's radiation treatments in Chicago. It'll be a pleasure to be back. And that's it.
Thank you, Richard. Now let us voice our sorrows, whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. Are there any sorrows that people would like to share?
Hola, everybody. I am Francisco. My head is broken. Our dog Precious went over the Rainbow Bridge. She was in pain and is in heaven now. We will miss her. Rest in peace.
Precious is their little poodle. This is the bookend. I'm not at my granddaughter's graduation. I had an airline ticket, which I lost because, and I'd like everyone to know this, you cannot leave the country while you're in the process of getting your permanente transferring. And it's taken a month, and I still don't have any travel papers, and I'm missing an amazing day. So I'm very sad about that. I just want people to know that that's a fact. You cannot leave. So just want to share that.
We went to the same problems getting our permanente, and we finally went to Guadalajara, to the office there, and pleaded, and that helped. So I don't know if it'll help you.
Are there any sorrows to be shared on Zoom, Richard?
Yes, from Kathy Coaches. Please light a candle of concern and send me healing energy as I fight various health issues. And that's it.
Well, good, because we're out of flame. And this candle from our care team represents the joys and sorrows we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows and joys.
Hi, everybody. Why don't we just take a little time to settle ourselves and enter into a time of tranquility, quietude, and meditation. I invite you to just notice your breath, breathing in, breathing out, noticing the breathing in, noticing the breathing out. And as the mind drifts off, as it often does, just come back to the breath. We'll sit together for a minute or two here. Just breathing. And let us return to this time and this space to be together again. And so, I'm hearing an echo, and I'm going to guess that everybody else on Zoom is probably hearing the same echo. I wonder if you can correct that. We'll see. That's better. Excellent. So a few years ago, a bizarre copyright dispute played out in the USA and in the UK over this picture. This photo is actually a selfie. There's a really weird effect happening, which is kind of cool, but probably not what you want. That's great. That's better. This is actually a selfie taken by a macaque monkey as she played with an unattended camera. Wikipedia posted this picture claiming that it was in the public domain because, after all, it was taken by a monkey. The owner of the camera disputed this in court, saying that because it was his camera, he owned the right to the picture. The People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, got involved, suing on behalf of the monkey, saying that the copyright belongs to the monkey. The court ruled that non-human actors are not entitled to copyright protection. Now, as unusual as this case was, it's relevant today as we see the output of artificial intelligence systems like ChatGPT or Midjourney, which is an art AI which created this particular picture. I mean, the question is, who really created this? Where does creativity come from? Who is the genius? Now, the origin of the word genius is actually the exact same word in Latin, genius, which meant the attendant spirit present from one's birth. Such a spirit is sort of like a guardian angel or a soul that gives a person their rational powers and abilities. These genius spirits also existed not just for people, but for places like houses and streets and vineyards and theaters and festivals. The pleasantness of a place, as well as the strength of a person's oath or the ability of a person, all depended on the genius that was associated with them. Of course, these genii could be worshipped, must be worshipped and respected. And in fact, sacrifices were necessary. I don't know about human sacrifices, but some kind of sacrifice. Gradually, this sense of genius was also applied to leaders, to emperors, to the powerful ones. The word genius gradually came to mean one's characteristic disposition, and later in the Enlightenment period, it came to mean talent or natural ability, or later still, exceptional ability. With the development of IQ testing, genius came to be applied primarily to exceptional intellectual ability. Gradually, the idea of the genius as an independent solo operator emerged. The philosopher David Hume saw the genius as, I quote, disconnected from society, as well as a person who works remotely at a distance away from the rest of the world. While for Immanuel Kant, genius is, again, I quote, the ability to independently arrive at and understand concepts that would normally have to be taught by another person. Now, of course, they say, follow the money. And that's certainly true here. As the ideas of intellectual property, copyright and patent law developed, they needed an underlying philosophical basis. Genius became this basis. One writer says, intellectual property law is based on a, and I quote, remarkably effective legal fiction, unquote, for individual genius. As we came into the late 19th and 20th centuries, the idea of genius merged with the so-called great man theory, the idea that the history of the world is nothing but the biography of great men. That's according to Thomas Carlyle, the creator of that idea. So it's a small step to see these great men, and they were mostly men, as geniuses. And this idea is so embedded in Western culture that we don't even see it. It just seems like common sense. Consider great architects. We immediately think of folks like Frank Lloyd Wright, who stands well above the crowd of other architects. But a few years ago, I visited Wright's famous Falling Water House near Pittsburgh. I was surprised to learn there that it had serious structural design issues, and these were only recently repaired at great expense. Even more surprisingly, when it was designed, a group of consulting engineers were called in and they reviewed the design and found it faulty. But Wright had threatened to withdraw from the project, so the engineering advice was ignored. Peggy Deemer, a professor of architecture in New Zealand, wrote in the New York Times some time ago condemning various high-profile architects as, she says, ethically insensitive, competitively destructive, and socially tone deaf. She pointed out that many of these Starchitects, as she called them, build massively over budget and overdue projects, caring little about how their designs fit into the built or natural environment. She compares them to Howard Rourke, the architect protagonist of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, that Bible of the capitalist right wing. This, of course, guaranteed a critical response, with one reader reacting by saying, Diemer's leveling ideology is fashionable in the academic architecture programs, but it also encourages mediocrity. We cannot do without the Howard Rourkes if we want new and unique designs. End quote. But even assuming there is a place for solo geniuses out there, are they born or are they made? Maybe doing something stupid can make you into a genius in a way, if you are very lucky. Trying to catch a football, Derek Amato dove into the shallow end of a swimming pool, receiving a serious concussion. Amato lost some of his hearing, had difficulty with memory, and suffered painful headaches. But just 4 days after the concussion, he was at a friend's house, saw a cheap Casio keyboard, and without thinking, sat down in front of it. He started playing, finding intervals and arpeggios, working out lyrical melodies as if he had been playing for years. He played for 6 hours, leaving his friend's house early in the morning, full of wonder at what had transpired. Here is a video clip of Amato talking about his gift.
And the fun part about when I'm doing these is, especially when it's like the first piece I ever played, is my mind allows me to do it in reverse or actually kind of backwards the whole piece, so I can do it, well, backwards. I walk every step through my life now with a symphony going on. It's like, it's almost as if they're playing for me. It's like every moment I have this beautiful symphony composing in my mind. About 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards, after I first discovered I could play, then it started making sense, and these shapes, these squares literally became squares, and they're little tiny black and white squares actually that go left to right, and it's like a ticker tape, so it's constant, it just keeps going around. I always tell everybody that, like right now while we're talking, they're going, even during conversation. So I'm hearing this beautiful symphony during our conversation. At the same time, I'm working. And I can't catch it all, I can't capture it all, because it's impossible for me to grab a violin, a cello, a piano, an acoustic guitar, a bass guitar, and a percussion instrument, and do it all at once. And so I didn't just hit my head and become Elton John overnight. It's a process, because the music to me is a small portion of this whole storyline. I guess in a way it's become a vehicle for me to do my life work.
Now, admittedly, we're talking about a specific kind of genius here in a specific area, a prodigious savant, as they are called. There may be fewer than 50 such individuals alive right now, people who exhibit specific and amazing skills in mathematics, art, and music. Researchers have begun to try to understand how a head trauma can lead to such gifts. They are learning that the injured brain seeks to repair itself by recruiting other uninjured parts of the brain and rewiring itself to access those parts. How such rewiring might create a prodigy remains a mystery. Perhaps it's genius in the original sense.
Today's reading is by Reverend Kathleen McTeague, published in her book Shine and Shadow. In early September, I stopped to watch my neighbor at work repairing a stone wall that lines the road perpendicular to ours. Built as all the old field walls of our region have been built, the stones are held by balance and judicious choice rather than by mortar. The wall was built well, but the weight of many decades has broken it here and there, with some stones fallen out of place or carried away for some other use. As I warm myself in the autumn sun and watch him work, I see that about half of what he does is simply look at the stones in their haphazard piles, stroking his chin in thought. Then from time to time, he rolls one from the pile onto the ground and turns it from side to side, pondering, or walks back to study again the place in the wall he's trying to mend. When he finally makes his choice, he's sure. Each stone waits for the right opening, the place where its particular heft and shape fit as though cradled. Once in place, it's no longer merely a stone, but an essential piece of the wall, part of a larger thing taking shape as naturally as a tree flows from root to trunk to branch. My neighbor is an ordinary working man. I know his name, and sometimes we talk together about life and horses and his willingness to help me haul manure to my garden one of these days before the first hard frost. But on this sunny September afternoon, as I watch his eyes and hands become familiar with each stone and then lift it to shape the wall, it's easy to imagine God at work in the immense universe, quietly humming, pulling our lives together into something strong and useful. I don't mean we're mute or helpless, waiting passively for the great stonemason to lift and move our lives or tell us where we belong. I mean only that there is a place for us, that our gifts, the shape of our minds and talents, the angles of our interest and concern, fit the needs of the world the way my neighbor's stones anchor themselves in the lengthening wall. I mean that the world's possibilities shift and change each time we put ourselves into building something large and strong and beautiful. Whether or not we find room in our theologies for the word God, the world itself calls us to imagine ourselves essential to this engaged holiness, bringing forth what is ours to give of creation and strength toward mending the broken world.
We've talked about those rare geniuses among us, but what about the rest of us? We who can never ascend to the ranks of genius. What about those of us who choose not to work remotely at a distance away from the rest of the world? We are not the reclusive geniuses of David Hume. We have likely long ago given up dreams of having some string of fantastic inspirations that lead to a claim for us as a prodigy or virtuoso or a genius. We may hope that those around us, those that follow us, our children, our grandchildren perhaps, our friends, may be so gifted, but nearly all the time they too turn out to be rather ordinary, or at least extraordinary in more ordinary ways. But having observed the antics, the misbehavior, the selfish boorishness of many of the prima donnas, the starchitects, the brainiacs, maybe we are rather glad to not be included in their ranks. I certainly don't want to jump into the shallow end of a swimming pool in hopes of discovering hidden talents at piano composition. But still, what do we do? Those of us who can never ascend to the ranks of genius. The answer is simple. We don't have to go it alone. One possibility is to collaborate with another person who, if we're lucky, has complementary qualities, so that the two together create a greater wholeness than either would have alone. Joshua Shrink Joshua Schenck wrote of the collaboration of Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Schenck argues compellingly that it was the collaboration of these two very different people that led to great music, that had they not had each other, they would not have been nearly as creative. Paul brought organization, diplomacy, and order. John brought spontaneity, agitation, and chaos. The music they created effectively balanced harmony with dissonance, sweetness with rawness. Schenck points out that other such partnerships, such as Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in the early days of Apple Computer, led to genius results. And even if we don't have a great creative partner to work with, we may still tap into the world of genius by collaborating with a great group. You may have had experiences like this, where you've been together with a group of exceptional people and amazing ideas and awesome creative output just seems to flow out as if from an ever-flowing, deep artesian well. This has been my experience in a few brief instances in my career. It is an invigorating, joyous experience to be working aside incredibly capable people, finding a creative groove where everyone is contributing their individual gifts. Almost always the creative product of such collaborations is far beyond the individual, what any individual team member could have come up with. We're learning what makes such collaborations successful. We're learning that groups in which everyone has more or less equal participation tend to be more creative, even intelligent, than groups dominated by a single individual, usually a man. We've also learned that allowing even some debate in brainstorming sessions results in more creative ideas. The hive mind, the collective intelligence of such teams is often far more effective than solo creatives. We've learned that the most successful creative teams include a mixture of old hands who have worked together on previous projects, along with new recruits who bring in new ideas and a kind of creative tension. We've also learned that creative people need to be physically close to each other. Co-authors who are within a few feet of each other tend to produce higher quality research than co-authors who are located miles apart. I'm not sure this was before the pandemic, but I don't really think this has changed. Now, I've been reading a book called Sleeping Beauties by evolutionary biologist Andreas Wagner. In it, he explores creative innovation by both biological evolution as well as by humans. He notes that in both cases, there is no uniform path to progress, no stairway to success, onward and upward forever. Evolution sometimes comes up with great ideas and then forgets about them, and they lay dormant for eons before being rediscovered. I mean, how many times has the eye been invented or winged flight evolved? Similarly, in human society, innovations often emerge multiple times. Wagner tells us the pendulum clock was invented at least 3 different times, the thermometer 7 times, the telegraph 4 times, and radar 6 times. Consider radar. Radar was first discovered by the German inventor Christian Holzmeier, but the idea was rejected by the German Navy as unnecessary and had to be reinvented 20 years later by both the Germans and the British. So a good creative idea is not enough. It has to fit into its environment. Eyes or wings on an animal have to help it survive. Something like radar has to fit into the culture where it arises. Wagner says, and I quote, "No invention succeeds on its own merit." This may be hard to swallow for those of us who believe that creative success arises from intrinsic genius. We may think that a novel is so moving that it should be an instant bestseller, or that a new medicine is so useful to humanity that humanity could not possibly do without it. But for no such innovation does any inner characteristic or quality suffice for success. The novel may speak to a narrow audience, and the new medicine may await a method for mass manufacture. End quote. Now, I love that story by UU minister Reverend Kathleen McTeague of the stonemason repairing a wall, each stone becoming part of something larger. Whether that larger thing is God or evolution or something else, it doesn't matter. I think our creative efforts are like that. We're beginning to have a far richer understanding of human creativity as we let go of the stereotype of the solo artist reclused in some isolated garret, toiling away with ideas and images in the mind. We begin to see creative genius as emergent phenomena, evolving from the interaction of many in collaboration. And when we are at our best, we recognize and celebrate the creative contributions of every participant. So let us honor those solo geniuses, yes, but let us remember what that great musical genius Mozart told us. Neither a lofty degree of intelligence or imagination, or I think there's a slide here. I don't know what's not up. Nor both together go to the making of genius. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius. Love is the soul of genius. Let us expand that love by forming and nurturing those collaborations that yield creative genius. May we widen that love by inviting everyone in to participate as part of a larger creative force. From our group efforts, from our boundless love, may there emerge true genius, an expansive spirit, a presence grander and more splendid than anything we as individuals can offer. May it be so.
The closing hymn is number 398, To See the World. There's only one verse in it. And to remind everybody of the tune, Linda and I did a recording of this quite a while ago, and I played the whole hymn first as a piano solo, and then Linda sings. So you're going to hear it first as a piano solo, and then you can sing. And I think you'll recognize it.
He's getting ready. Let's everyone rise in body and spirit and join us in singing.
I'll play a little introduction now.
May you go forth, the creative inner geniuses that you all are, individually and especially together. May you go forth with the spirit of your own genius, always offering you wisdom. May you go forth always ready to listen to that genius, feeling that love, which is at the heart of creative genius.
Let us extinguish our chalices with these words which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world.
So this is a piece by a very well-known composer that was updated by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I will try and redeem myself from what happened just a few minutes ago. This is Nut Rocker. The iPad got stuck and I couldn't change the page. It's just been my lucky day today.
Our worship is over, our service begins. Go in peace and with a purpose.